Hello and welcome everyone to the Wednesday, December 6th edition of the SIG ContribEx meeting. December 6th, 2023, I should say the year, because it's almost not that year anymore. So we have our note stock in the chat. If you need it, do let us know. Do add yourself to the attendees list if you haven't already. Noah Abrams has volunteered to be our note taker. Did I pronounce your name right? I think that's right.
Sure.
Might as well double check. Abrams?
I go either way.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I grew up with someone whose last name was Abrams without the H and A. So
I've pronounced it both ways depending on how I feel at any given point in time.
Fair enough. So with that, I think we'll get started. A reminder that we do operate under a code of conduct, which essentially says to be respectful of your fellow speakers and attendees and generally be excellent to each other. If there are any new folks on the call, we like to offer an opportunity now for you to unmute and say hello, or type in the chat and say hello and a little bit about why you're here. Totally optional, but I will leave that open for a moment now. Alrighty. Cool, and feel free to do that at any time. So we'll go ahead and hop into our agenda, I think. Starting off with events, let's talk about the Contributor Summit.
Yeah, so we kicked off planning on Monday of this week. Excited to get things started there. Myself and Arnaud are going to be working as leads with Noah as our emeritus advisor. We do have a couple action items following the initial meeting this week. We have to sort out the timing to hopefully be a little more EU time zone friendly for the meeting. So I think the impression that I got was we kind of landed on doing 2 meetings every week, a more EU friendly time and a more US friendly time, which, that works for us on the release team too. I think it makes sense. And as of now, we still have 1 lead role to fill. But overall, I think we've got a strong start to things.
Which one is that? The
Day of Ops.
Day of
Or
Ops.
Yes, Day of Ops, because you're going to do the SIG meet and greet, right? And that was the other one that we still had. So yeah, it's Day of Ops is the last one that we still need to fill.
And I said I would fill it at least interim. Mario offered to help out as well, who is on the call. So thank you, Mario, for your interest.
Basically, I don't have experience as for Contributor Summit for event organization, but I did run some developer events or community events in the past. That's basically the only downside, that I never was a shadow at a Contributor Summit.
I think
but you've also been to a Contributor Summit.
Yeah, you've attended plenty of them, and if you've got experience like working on similar events in the past, I think that's all very relevant. So
thank you, Mario.
We should discuss this in Summit staff meeting, because Mario's going to need somebody who does have that experience working with him in some way.
Certainly,
because Ops is one of those roles that has like a whole bunch of little details, some of which are not documented yet.
Yeah, I think at minimum we'll need an emeritus advisor type role on that one.
Yeah,
I can help with that too, because I've run ops more than anyone else.
And Natalie will be around as well as comms lead. She can't do Day of Ops this time, but she could probably help out.
And Natalie and me are basically living in the same country and time zone, which makes things easier to sync.
So I think with some teamwork, we can make this work.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Love it.
Woo. Cool. So we'll discuss that more on the Contributor Summit call. Any other questions, comments, concerns about the Contributor Summit?
There is a draft of the website. It's a draft PR. There are some already some folks added some comments. I think the newest thing that came in was Bob mentioning that the venue is not the official KubeCon venue, so we need to change this as well. So if anyone that has some time can look over the draft PR, this would be nice.
You should put that in Summit staff. Cool. Very good. I feel like someone put something in the chat that I wanted to mention, but maybe not. All right. I think I thought of something. Maybe I'll think of it again. Cool. Excellent. So with that, we'll move on, unless folks have anything else they want to talk about with the Contributors Summit. Oh, I remember what it was. Since this is our first meeting post KubeCon, we should call out that we did have a successful Contributor Summit at KubeCon. And thank you very much to everyone who contributed to that. Thank you so much, Nigel. I saw you join the call, and that's what made me think of this. Thank you so much for your leadership on the North America Contributor Summit.
Thanks. I am still tired.
I think that's going to last a while. All right. So with that, we'll move into next thing. Oh, I put the discussion that we had before we started recording into the events section. It could also be an open mic discussion. Since it was related to KubeCon, I put it there, so I'll go ahead and mention it. We were talking about, apparently Paris had a tradition of right after KubeCon, Cat's getting upset with me, right after KubeCon, looking through the notes of various SIGs and finding folks who did a lot of note taking and celebrating them by sending them out just a little pen with the Kubernetes logo on it or something like that, which sounds like a really cool tradition, and maybe we should think about implementing a similar tradition once again. We were also saying that it's kind of hard to find all of the SIG notes. They can be a little bit spread around, even though there is a drive for them. So if anyone is particularly interested in the project of working with SIGs and finding out where their notes are and moving them to the right drive, that might be a project we could use some help with. If that sounds cool to you, make sure to let us know.
And if anyone that has a full capacity on what that would entail could write up a GitHub issue.
That is a good idea.
That would
Good
be
call.
great.
Excellent. Any other questions, comments, discussion around that? Cool. Let's move on to our next agenda item, which is mentoring. Any updates in the mentoring space right now? I would imagine not.
Yeah, we're just finishing up a round of LFX and about to start on a new one. But
Okay.
I don't have details of the particular projects.
Very good. Anything you particularly want to call out for mentoring? Any calls for help or anything like that? Cool. All right. We'll move on to the next item then for mentoring, just finishing up the LFX mentorship one. Yeah, perfect. The next item in our agenda is contributor comms, which would be me today. One thing that we're talking about a lot in comms right now is ways that we can better interact with the SIGs to get stuff from them that we need to share, especially help wanteds. The goal was for the annual report to kind of be that, be the way that we get what each SIG needs. But it's not like we're gated on doing that once a year. We could really do that whenever. And we'd kind of like to make sure that the SIGs know that better and maybe establish a new process for doing that. So we've been talking about creating a new form, maybe, that we'll share with the SIGs and say, hey, if you want something from us, you can fill out this form and we'll do it, or something along those lines.
I mean,
We're also talking about that as a way to like make sure that work gets shared around.
it seems like an
Josh.
issue in K community would be better than a forum.
Yeah, because that's what we currently have, but nobody uses it. So we're debating ways that we could fix that. One thing we were saying is that even if a form isn't really the ideal way to do it, if we created a form and then shared it to the SIGs, that would at least make them aware that we do this once again. So it would up awareness. And then if we change it again, then that's another way to increase awareness. Bob?
So I was just thinking, sort of like doing the, readout call for help that, Noah did at or proposed at North America that actually worked out well.
That was
Maybe
awesome.
maybe we use KubeCon as a trigger to sort of be like for people to think about that sort of thing, and they can either bring it up themselves during the readout, or we can have something published or whatever. Just thinking
I
like,
do like that.
yeah, I'm just thinking because KubeCon is an event that people will prioritize. So just thinking like it might be a way to just sort of get people to actually
Do it.
do it.
Yeah. It was in the room that was recorded. Did we record those calls for help? Do we know?
That room was recorded, and we never followed up.
Okay. It might be cool to follow up and see if we got that recording, and if we could post it, then we could maybe do like timestamps in the video along with the posts and be like, hey, at KubeCon, this SIG said that they needed this kind of help. Check out the SIG chair talking about it here.
One of the big takeaways that we had from that event was that we needed better follow-up anyway. So this is just one more way to work on it.
Is
Yeah,
there
I mean,
ever a
that
time
was a
when
new
that's
idea
not the
this
case?
time around, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because actually what I would see doing is somewhere having a I mean, honestly, basically all those things should become help wanted issues somewhere, and then should go into contributor comms so that we could communicate them out to people who were not in the room at KubeCon by some means other than video, other than watch this 20-minute long video and this is at minute 7. Yeah, I think that would work. Actually, let's add that to this next summit meeting agenda here.
We could also make it a precursor that in order to go up and discuss something, you have to have at
You need
least
to have
an
an
issue to
issue.
reference.
I like that. We could put the QR codes for the issues on the screen behind them.
Or even, hey, if you want to get up on stage right now, go open an issue while you're sitting in the audience so that you can go up and talk about it and point to it.
That's true. That's true. Mario has a stand up.
What also, when we talked about following up on stuff that happened on KubeCon, maybe it would also be like a nice idea to make like a call out series on the social media channels of comms, so that basically we highlight those call for helps again via the social media platforms in like a regular base until next KubeCon, and then you basically have like a reoccurring communication for callouts.
Yeah, things do change between KubeCon and the next though, so I don't know. We would probably want to spread them out. So it would take some time. It might not go all the way to the next KubeCon, and maybe it shouldn't, because things might change and the help wanted might not be relevant anymore by the time we get to the next KubeCon. But yeah, something like that. Cool. Speaking of social media channels, we have at least Bob on here for steering. Do we have any new news on Race.io? I'll take the opportunity to ask.
No, honestly, I forgot.
Cool. I'll put that in the chat in the Slack again. Cool. And for some context on that, the CNCF stopped posting on Kubernetes IO on Twitter or X or whatever we call that. Zitter is my preferred terminology. The CNCF stopped posting on the Kubernetes IO channel. That's not called a channel, account in like April. And so we're working on confirming what we're going to do with that.
Was that
probably
a
the comms
conscious
team will take it
choice?
up. We're working on figuring that out. Seems to be. What we've heard is that they were intending to give the keys to the castle back to the projects, but we didn't hear about that. So we're trying to confirm with them. We were going to confirm after KubeCon. Then folks were, of course, on vacation after KubeCon. And so we still need to sync back up with the CNCF and be like, hey, so that's us now? Did you want to tell us that? So that's kind of where we're at on that. The comms team is preparing and gathering forces for this anyway. So that's a couple of major things that are going on in comms. Also, our regular SIG spotlight stuff is going on. LWKD folks are doing more stuff in our channels, which is wonderful. And we're kind of integrating more. So lots of good stuff happening. Anyone else have anything they want to call out from those? Because we've got a few other folks who at least attended the last meeting on the call. Cool. Feel free to mention anything at any time. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is contributor documentation. Any updates there?
Wait, did we address the comment there, Sandy Ben's comment?
Oh, sorry. Did I miss one? What was the comment? Oh, there it is.
It's in chat.
Can we do a kind of biannual survey during pre-post KubeCon forum for help wanted targets targeted at chairs and tech leads to collect info on the help wanted sections? I mean, there's a spectrum here between the annual report and the doing it more frequently. It's like we're trying to figure out where the happy middle ground is there. Like we already have the annual report. If it became a biannual report, then it wouldn't be the annual report anymore. Which a big part of the annual report is the idea that we should get these help wanted bits.
I mean, it seems a bit more targeted. Like if it's just about we're SIG so and so and we need help, you know.
Yeah, and then on the other end of the spectrum is we were talking about doing these help wanted calls in KubeCon and like maybe doing issues or something like that. And like how similar is this to that? It's like somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, this suggestion. And I don't think we should do all of them. We should probably only do a couple of them. Bob.
I mentioned this in chat earlier, but something that I think might work well in terms of being a fine line between getting like having everyone file independent issues or surveying everyone or doing things like that, and the other side would be just to copy what we do for Meet Our Contributors Mortal Kombat and have one parent issue that is sort of call for volunteers, call for help wanted or whatever, and then that's one issue that can just be linked around and people can see things as they populate.
Yeah.
I would add to that, make it monthly. Versus, because otherwise it becomes kind of a wasteland and we don't know who's taken on what. But if it's monthly that you have a thread like that, then one thread closed down, the next thread opens, and it just keeps people active, I guess.
I wasn't thinking like being a just general help wanted, but like sort of leading up to KubeCon, where it's the where people like do the readout and things like that, just because it's a trigger for people to like, okay, need to start preparing. My one sort of concern and this we would probably need to police a bit more if we do anything with issues, is the people that will come up and just like randomly try and self-assign or say I want to help, but they are, most of the people that do that have never contributed before, and they aren't necessarily the target audience for our help requests.
Yeah, that's a good point. And maybe Sundapan's suggestion of doing it as a survey would be a more effective way to mitigate that issue.
Yeah,
because if you put it in GitHub, people will find it and do that, right? But if you do it as a survey, people can't find it, but we still get the information to share.
Yeah, the on the survey side, like my one concern is it's trivial to ignore a survey. But if you start seeing like, oh shit, every SIG, like, or all these other SIGs have put things here, maybe there's sort of the social pressure to do that versus again a survey link or email that's easy to forget.
Ignore. Yeah, that's a good point as well. So to answer Sundapan's question, I think yes, we definitely want to do something like that. We're just debating exactly what that will look like. And I don't think we'll figure it out today, but this is excellent discussion to start us thinking about it. And we'll come back to this later, hopefully. Maybe chat about it more on Slack. I don't want to take up too much more time on it, probably. But we might have time to talk about it.
I have a feeling that based on the reception to the callouts at KubeCon and the number of people that are interested in this, we may end up forming some sort of help wanted subcommittee just for managing these particular types of issues.
Which maybe Sundapan would be a good member or leader of, because he's
I
been
think
doing a
it
great
would
job
be-
of
And
promoting that.
and I
in
would
our
say,
group.
if we had additional volunteers to help with this, one of the other things that we could really help the SIGs with is simply auditing their existing help wanted issues. Because one of the chronic problems everybody has, including our own SIG, is a bit rot on our help wanted issues. Is that keeping your help wanted issues up to date is a continual effort, and always tends to fall off of the to-do list over time. And that actually is something that relatively new contributors could help with.
Nigel has a hand up.
Yeah, I think as well, like, it happens regularly in this call where folks brand new show up and like, I am here. What do I do? Having a place like that would be really, really useful to help with those. We could always send them back to the website and ask them, what are you interested in? But I think just having a curated list to say, this is where you can go. That sounded like I was saying go to hell, but like saying like this is where like people are actually like looking for your help. They're waiting for you.
I'm glad folks seem excited about this project. Lots of discussion, which is awesome. There's some really good discussion going on in the chat. Josh mentioned that this is yet another thing to replace a bit of the community meeting. And there's a discussion going on about issues and boards in GitHub to track this kind of stuff.
It's suddenly
Noah.
silent for like 2 seconds in here, so I can actually say something.
and
The chat that I was just thinking about is that if you do like a GitHub board instead of issues, the cards themselves can't be assigned to people. So people can add those cards, and then if they want to convert it to an issue, they can. But the card itself, there's no way somebody going by can
Right.
just grab it and say, I want to do this, and then never touch it. So that would be one easy way for people to just drop thoughts and ideas in. So that's kind of where that discussion's coming from.
Interesting point.
Figured I'd pop out while I don't have noise near me.
And Josh?
I mean, I was going to say there already is actually a general board maintained by the CNCF called Contributor that picks up everybody's help wanted issues. So if SIGs actually do have a well-gardened set of help wanted issues, they show up there and you can search by domain. It's
Yeah,
not
I
the
think
same
so.
thing as a project board, but it is a listing.
Yeah.
And then
I guess I'm kind of thinking that if it's not, if we're still in the pre-help wanted tag kind of thing, like pre getting to that point where we're just putting out thoughts of things, this would be nice if somebody could pick this up, instead of opening an issue on something and then that sits there and kind of rots over time in the community repo or in another repo. People can put a card up there and then it's a little easier to kind of curate those out of the whole rest of the stuff that we know is scoped and tagged and ready to go. So
Do you
I don't know.
do you want to take a first stab at that and see if it becomes useful?
I can start that up. See, I might need help socializing it to people, but I'll give it a shot.
Do we want to use the existing Kubernetes help wanted board that Bob linked in the chat?
It's not a board, it's just it's a shortcut to a query to get all the help wanted and good first issues across
Okay.
all.
So not.
Yeah, that's more similar to the Clo Monitor one that basically just scrapes help wanted and good first issue.
I think the one thing I'm going to need to do if I'm going to do this is, I'm assuming we put it in the Kubernetes community repo, or do we want to put it in the Kubernetes org? And if so, I don't think I have permissions to create a board. So I will touch base with someone in chat about that.
You should actually be able to create it. We at least I'm pretty sure we gave org wide permissions for people to create boards.
I will see what I can do. And I will leave a note in chat in the Slack. Thank you.
Much appreciated, Laura. Thank you for investigating that route for this. Sounds promising. We do use a board in comms, and we use those, like the cards, and occasionally convert them to issues as well. So maybe that would work. We'll see. It'll be an attempt, and like we said, it raises awareness one way or another. All right. We'll talk about that more in the comms meeting as well, if I can remember that. Everyone else who's on here who goes to comms meetings, help me remember to mention that so that we can talk about it more there. Cool. Yeah. Such is the cycle of open source. Bob said that we used to use one in ContribEx for triaging, but it fell out of use. We've already been through one cycle of that in comms. We had a board and then we stopped using it and then we went back to the board. So here's the cycle again. All right.
Remember, if tools stop being useful, you don't have to keep using them. And if they become useful again, you can start using them again.
Such is the world we live in. Cool. So I'll move on from that. Again, feel free to continue conversation in the chat or bring it back up again if you have something you really want to talk about on it. I already mentioned contributor documentation. Nobody said anything, so I think we probably don't have anything there, but contributor documentation. Going once? Okay. Next one, moderation and media. Any updates there?
Yeah. Just firstly, a shout out to Pratish. I've been super busy post KubeCon and have not been able to attend to the YouTube channel. And Jordan Liggett reached out because they thought that LTS didn't have a meeting playlist set up, which they did in their only automation. So it was all fine. But in that thread, I'm gonna get caught up on the YouTube videos, and Pratish stepped up and helped out, and it was super helpful. And so wanted to do a shout out there, which is a further reminder that I need to get back to doing Zapier things to get further automation going, as well as getting those videos from Contributor Summit uploaded. I just moved some stuff over to that folder. So if the automation is working correctly, then they should show up on YouTube and I'll have those live, by the end of today. But yeah, that's my main update is, I need to carve out some time to go back to Zapier and get some further automation going. And then, shout out to people helping with YouTube videos because it's super helpful.
Thank you to Pratish. And also it sounds like there's some help wanteds buried in there.
Well, let's see if we can
Really?
automate this and then we'll go from there.
related to that, there was some discussion over in tag contributor strategy whether or not we were going to look at potentially doing some YouTube automation. Not defined, not definite yet, but would you be the primary point of contact for that, Nigel?
Yeah, awesome. I maybe I wrote that in the note, maybe I didn't, but yeah, definitely also need to get more SIGs onboarded, get more tags, more groups onboarded.
Awesome.
Yeah, let me know.
Wonderful.
If that gets a positive thumbs up, I will come back to you.
Glad to see more of our processes getting interest from the community.
On the topic of moderation, where are we in our ability to move SIG mailing lists to Kubernetes.io ownership?
So the way that any person could do it does not work because you are limited to 100 people per day in updating the list. But as a steering member with direct access as an admin to our Google Workspace, I can basically upload a CSV of addresses to populate a list.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm going to reach out to you about SIG Network because they're having a spam problem on their mailing list and they need help dealing with it.
Yeah,
now I think the mailing list is owned by Tim Hawken and only he can deal with spammers, which is why it's not happening. So
I think Antonio flipped it to them either approving all messages or approving messages for first senders, or no, he limited it to you have to be on the list to be able to send messages.
Right. Yeah, but the people who are spamming are actually on the list, and it doesn't prevent somebody from joining the list and sending.
Yeah, it's why our default setting is to the first time you send a message to a list, it always goes to the moderation queue.
Yeah, but I mean, mostly it's one of those cases of, nobody of this would be a lot easier if it belonged to Kubernetes.io because then we could assign people, then people could volunteer to help with moderation, which is currently not possible. So, because previously, because at the beginning of November they flipped it to basically approving everything because it was waiting on Tim to moderate things and no messages were going through.
Okay.
Anyway, okay, I'll follow up with you in an issue. Well, actually, I've already created an issue, so I'll follow up with you on actually making that happen.
That one, we'll fault sync up out of band. That'll take a bit.
I am intimidated by that project and glad we're talking about it. Cool. So we'll move into our next agenda item, which is GitHub management. Any updates there?
The only big thing I can think of right now is we just brought etcd in on our enterprise account. They're actually the first org to join it. And so we want to bring all our other orgs under that probably sometime over the holiday. It essentially just gives us like a central point of management for all of our orgs instead of having to do it across, like change settings in each individual one. The other thing that have learned through bringing them in is that they use GitHub Actions for a lot of their CI, and they use some of the GitHub large runners, and the large runners we do get billed for. So we are pursuing, I think it's called like actuated.dev. There's basically a service that allows you to use a GitHub action to execute on a like Equinix bare metal node or in Oracle Cloud, the CI jobs, and those we have like a good amount of like credits with.
Okay. I mean, I will say in the longer term, the reason why we have all those GitHub actions is because we haven't had access to Prow.
Yep. Yeah, there's getting to Prow is definitely the long-term goal. It's just switching to this is like adding a secret and adding one line into the GitHub action. So for at least the short term, it should solve that problem. It's only we are only
Interesting.
built for large runners. Only for large runners.
Interesting world we live in. The challenges of integrating systems even within the same tool. There's so much that GitHub does. It's very interesting to see how different folks use it. All right. Any other items on GitHub management or questions or comments about the etcd thing? Cool. The last official agenda item, though we do have some open mic discussion topics, is elections. Do we need to be working on stuff for elections right now, Josh? How's that sub-project going? Any updates there?
Wait, when is, I mean, Electo has a long to-do list. And I still need to, yeah. Yeah, I know. We've all been busy, Laura. I haven't followed up with you either. Yeah, and we need to do that right. With number one on the to-do list is is having an actual test framework, because that's
right.
gating a lot of the other changes we want to make. But none of the items of the to-do list are prohibitive for running the Kubernetes elections. It's just that some things would make it a little bit nicer, right? Like particularly the case sensitivity issue, which is really annoying, and unfortunately one that absolutely requires the new test framework in order to fix, because the case sensitive comparisons are all over the code. But see, when do we normally we don't start our election cycle until June, though.
Yeah. But
so yeah,
it's not used just for that. Electo has other things, but as far as Kubernetes is concerned, that's basically the only one. Is there anything else that we do? Okay.
I mean, so far, I haven't seen any of the SIGs take advantage of having Electo be available, but I think that's normal because I don't think the SIGs do too many things that require an actual vote. I mean, it's there. People can create an election for themselves at any time, but to date, only steering has really used it.
Cool.
Regarding the test framework, and I think I've asked this before, what language is everything written in so that folks
it's all Flask. It's all Flask.
All Flask.
It's all Python.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
test framework's going to be in Python.
Yeah. So I tried to work with some student interns on this, but it turns out that CS programs don't teach people how to do testing, apparently.
Which is my experience.
And I'm not enough of a DevOps to train somebody on how to do testing. I barely really know how to do it myself. So the student intern thing wasn't going anywhere.
Noted.
You mean writing tests?
I mean creating a framework to plug tests into and checking things like test coverage.
Oh, gotcha. Is this something that we can help with?
Yeah, as in right now we have a bunch of individual unit tests that mainly cover the vote accounting. And we don't have, for example, an end-to-end test that says, hey, can somebody log in and cast a vote? You know, if they're allowed to cast a vote and not cast a vote, if they're not allowed to cast a vote, etc. Right? That sort of testing doesn't exist. And so when I want to do things like fix the case sensitivity, I really need that kind of end-to-end testing, because otherwise I can push a fix and I can end up locking everyone out of the election. And Laura volunteered to help with that. We just have not gotten around to it, and we just need to avoid getting all the way past Paris and not having done anything on it. And I'm also hampered by the fact that all of my real life production test experience was in C and not in Python. So
and with Paris basically being tomorrow, from my perspective, that is a significant timeline.
It's just, obviously, what have we built? We want to do it so that we can then clear out part of the to-do list before the next steering elections, ideally. Which means getting it done. So Laura and I will work on it. Anybody else who does Python development is welcome to chip in. It's really code-wise an extremely simple project. The only complicated bit of code is the vote accounting part. And that's the only part of the code that's actually very well tested. So anybody with some experience, welcome to help. Once we have a new testing framework, I can again actually take on people who don't have experience, but right now I don't want to do that.
Makes sense. Any other questions, comments there? Cool. Thank you for bringing that up, Josh. That sounds like an important thing that I'm glad that we talked about. So moving into our open mic discussion topics, Laura.
I put this out there as an issue already, but in an interview with Bob, because we interviewed Bob for a podcast, we talked about making the annual reports and the CAPs, but especially the annual reports, easier for people to find, and maybe like having an automated system that takes the markdown, critifies it, and dumps it somewhere for all of the annual reports to be visible. In the past, this was done by hand, and there was a lot of summarizing, and that's a lot of work. So there was a discussion about automating. So I wanted to just surface that issue for people to know that it's there. If you all want to comment, be part of things, I just want to get that out there as something that's a help wanted. Speaking of help wanted things. So I don't really have anything specific on it. All of the details I have are in that issue, but yeah. People are bored and want to do automation. Go for it.
Bob is
ranting
saying,
about Bash or ranting about annual reports?
Yeah, is this
I'm not sure.
Oh, the reports and things like that.
Okay, yes.
Oh, I thought it was about Perl testing because there's now Bash testing and Perl testing going on in the chat. So,
all right, chat. All right, we might come back to that annual report discussion at the end. Let's see about these other couple of items. This was listed as everyone. Extensive discussion about working on help wanted issues. This is kind of a review and potentially creating a sub-project specifically to help the SIGs manage this. And Laura's going to work on a board for that. Good to
I
call
posted
that out
one in
again.
the Slack as a starter point. But I'll post here too.
And a note here about the email list moving to Kubernetes.io domains, which I think I put in. Cool. So I think we can come back to the annual report thing now. Any other open mic discussion topics to add before we dive into that? Cool. Don't hesitate to let us know if there are. Otherwise, Bob, please rant at us about annual reports.
They suck. In general, our compliance with them is not great for a variety of reasons. We with Steering Hat want to rework some of the, revisit some of the questions and update them to be a little bit more actively applicable. There's some other things that we've done to gather some stats automatically, stats automatically, but there's still some plugging that has to be done. and we added functionality to automatically pull in KEPs and list them out, at least the title of them. But the big issue we were running into is like most of the leads were just sort of letting them be as is with just the like titles, and not actually providing context around the the KEP itself. So like as a end user or someone that is curious about it, I have no context about what something going from.
I mean,
yeah.
Isn't this just an extension of the problem that most KEPs don't get updated after creation?
They get updated with once they go like through the graduation process.
Yeah.
But once they hit GA, no, like they're essentially done.
Oh, no. No, I'm saying if you look at your average KEP, it gets updated twice. Once when it's created and when they're trying to take the feature to GA.
Yeah.
In between, it does not get incrementally updated at all.
Yeah. But that's also touching on another issue with like bad feedback loops with users and getting input on that stuff in general. Honestly, at this point, I wouldn't invest too much into us working on annual reports until like steering can revisit some things and decide how things are going to go from there. I have again, like I have a whole slew of thoughts, and I actually have like a whip proposal sort of drafted for some of this. But yeah, like when it comes to doing things like the roll up of trying to summarize things, between Paris and I, we literally put in probably 30 hours of reading everyone's annual reports and consolidating them down, and trying to provide more context on trying to tease things out and put them in there. And at this point, steering is not going to do roll-ups again, unless other things drastically change. I will hold off ranting more from there, and we can talk more later once like steering has reconvened and talked about this stuff.
It sounds like the amount of mental overhead that goes into the reports needs to be reviewed for everyone's sanity and the help of everyone's perspective. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, like the big part, like we did the reports as a because SIGs used to have a quarterly transparency requirement of having to put out a deck or send something to the list and like do something at the community meeting, and that was we had very little success there. It was a lot of just harassing people to get stuff done. So the doing it once a year type thing was supposed to be less toil, but that has like we're still having like poor compliance around that. So like some of the thoughts have been like, do we shift it to be like just be like alongside the releases, like do a post-release report for the things that have happened in the past 4 months and just have it be much smaller, or various other things. Either way, like there's a lot of discussion going on at I should say there was a lot of discussion going on like especially at KubeCon around some of this stuff, and steering. It's like on one of the big things for the current steering committee's agenda to sort out.
Have ideas around distributing the work been discussed?
Yeah, like we've told people explicitly, like, you know, you as the leads, you don't have to do this. Like, it's a great way to just delegate it to people. And especially if you have people that you think might be good lead candidates, to like get them involved and like, you know, have them talk more about the stuff and learn more about the various different subprojects and things. But
yeah,
I was thinking more like the project of the annual report. Could we have like roles that own parts of the report and then they bring them all together at the end? Could that be a way to split up the work and make it better? Or
ideally, that's sort of where it comes in from, like the sub-project leads and things like that, and the sub-project owners, and just sort of doing the roll-up, because the sub-project leads should have an idea of the things that are most relevant to them and the status of their things, and being able to give a couple sentence update in the doc.
Does steering have the capacity to create a subcommittee of non-steering members to address this particular issue? Like a cabinet?
I don't think so, but like it oh, that hasn't come up before. Like I don't
feel
think
like we already have enough groups to address this. The problem is that all of those groups are understaffed. Right? Like, because I know what's going on with this, right? Because like right now I'm working with one SIG where they literally have one active lead. And I'm working with them on trying to actually recruit new leads. That SIG is not in a good place to prepare their annual report because they're already understaffed. And sort of adding a separate group is not really going to help them.
Well, I'm wondering if it would be helpful or not for this particular item to have somebody that owns it and then can reach out, and instead of having to get additional SIG leadership, get someone that can take that 10% off of the existing SIG leadership and pull it into a separate group or separate committee that owns it.
The thing is like, it should be the SIGs that have the knowledge to be able to populate the annual report, and pulling that into a separate committee is not really going to do anything, because that separate committee doesn't actually have that, like, except for the members that are there that have that in-depth SIG knowledge.
Is there any way to pull just the preparation out? I mean, again, I'm spitballing here.
Yeah, the preparation side, like, is they should already be able to delegate that to their SIG members. And we've said that, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of actual following up action on that. So like there's some stuff with just basically, you know, continuing to push on the leads to delegate in the first place. There's a lot of various little aspects that basically need to be revisited, and like there have been multi-hour discussions on this topic.
So you're saying the idea is to keep the focus on the delegation and not to try and give them any sort of crutch that they could use to not have to delegate.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least I think. Like they should be able to delegate to members of the SIG or the sub-project leads, or sub-project owners right now, until they can promote sub-project leads, to be able to give those various updates and consolidate them into, you know, a usable report. There's other things that we can do on the automation side, but that still doesn't remove having to provide that additional context to make that information usable to a larger audience.
Yeah. I mean, I would think if we could do anything, it would be some volunteers from ContribEx working with each individual SIG to sort of walk through the whole process.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was imagining. One of the barriers for these SIG leaders is, one, the delegation to the writing part. If we like had someone that was assigned to go to the SIG meeting and say, hey, tell me right now your help wanted piece and give me a 1-sentence description of your SIG or something like that, and they told them that, and then it was their job to go and write it up, maybe that would help to address those.
Yeah,
but
we tried that.
we're also
actually,
at time, by the way.
Yeah, we did try that, and
Okay.
It's mostly like, well, I don't know. You're asking me off the top of my head. I'd have to go look look it up, and there isn't that follow up. So
Gotcha.
And then
Yeah, and
they're
I'd
turning
rather-
into census takers.
yeah,
I'd rather walk the leads through the process, because the goal here is to do it once rather than to do it every time.
yes,
Cool.
The as in once it becomes a sort of well-known task that they have to do every year, right, where it's not a conceptual problem but it's just work, then a lot of them will actually get it done. Right now, I think a lot of them look at the annual report and are like, I don't know where to start. And if we can walk them through, let's break it down into the bunch of little tasks that it really is, and get it done, then, for any SIG with continuity of leadership, they can do it next year themselves.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you all very much for the context. We are a minute over time. Folks need to get going. I'm sure some do. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. We'll see you all on Slack.